Going to do the Daf Yomi for Shabbos, and that is Peches. We're going to start on the bottom of Pei Zayin on the base. That the Gemara has said that if you write a get in two columns, then it's okay. So it says Shir Miktas Saget because we Daf Hasheni Veidim Ulamata Kasha. So if I had to get in two columns, it's okay. So the Gemara says, but why? Why aren't we don't have to be concerned that maybe this is too get? Misrami is man de kama of Edim de Basra, and he had the date on the first one and the witnesses on the second one. The Gazmei was man de Basra, and he cut off the witnesses of he cut off the date on the second one. The Edim de kama and the witnesses on the first one. They combined the two documents. So why don't we have to be concerned about that? Amar Rabbi Abba. So Rabbi Abba explains. No, we see the space below, and so we know that he didn't cut it off. So the Gemara says the dom was man de basra megas, but maybe cut off the date on the second one, and so therefore, and then he combined the second witnesses. So the Gemara says, well, just like Rabbi Abba said, also in this case, we're talking about a case where there's space above, and so therefore. We could see from the margins that he didn't cut off anything. The Gemara says maybe he changed his mind. At first, maybe he decided not to divorce her. Rashi explains. Then he changed his mind to divorce her afterwards. And so therefore, the first one was disqualified because he changed his mind in the middle. Or else, alternatively, maybe he wrote it on a different date. And so maybe signed it on a different date. So the Gemara says, the cost of Haray, so the Gemara says, maybe he changed his mind. So the Gemara explains, the cost of Haray milamatu mutaris milamal. No, the Gemara explains that that's not possible because we're talking about a case where at the end of the first get it says Harayat, and then it says on the top of the next one mutaris. So we see it's like the same concept going on. The Gemara says v'domis ramalei, but maybe indeed he changed his mind between Harayat and mutaris. The Gemara says no. Look, you don't have to be concerned about such an extreme case where he's writing Harayat and then all of a sudden he changes his mind. Rashi says no. The idea be matachta de Megilta. Rashi says there's a different scenario. He says all of these questions we can answer with the same answer, that we see the parchment was stretched out. So we see from the way that the parchment was stretched out that there was no other parchment there. And so therefore, since he could see around it that nobody cut it or anything, and so therefore it's for sure okay. So the Gemara says, the Gemara goes on, the Gemara says, let's say the witness is signed on the top of the page, and that was the case of the Mishnah. So the witness signed on the top of the page, on the side, or behind it, then it's going to be disqualified. So the Gemara asks the question, Rav signed from the side, and it was okay, because I was Rav. He obviously signed his documents from the side. So the Gemara says, yeah, when Rav signed the documents from the side, but the gag of Rav's document, the roof of Rav's document, was actually next to the writing. Rashi says, when the roof of the signature was klapik sabaget, was underneath the writing. The high vaday al get zechasam. So for sure, he was signing on this get. So therefore, when do we say that the signature from the side is no good? Where the roof of the signature is facing away from the get, but where the roof of the signature is facing towards the get itself, then we're going to say it was okay. So the Gemara says, but if that's the case, if it's as long as the roof of the signature is faced the side, it's okay. Now what you said, if you have the two heads facing each other and the witnesses are in the middle, that both of them are going to be disqualified. But why? Let's say why don't we say it's okay if whichever roof of signature is facing the side, it should be okay. then it should be okay under those circumstances. So the Gemara says, Hasam de Ramile Ivra. So the Gemara says that there it was a different case. There, we're talking about a case of signatures that are set down like a bolt. Rashi says, "Ha'edem mutam ben shnei Gittin kibriach rashi shitos shel chasima." So the witnesses are placed down between the two gets like a briach, like a crossbeam of roshi shitos shel chasima mechaberna get kibriach hadelas shenimshachas ba'avir pesach kachem nimshachem bein avir shnei Gittin. So we say that just like we have a bolt extending across the door and connecting them, so too that's what's going on in this case. That it's not clear which one it's being connected to, because we have the text of the get and the signatures are going across like a bolt, and so therefore we're not sure which one it's being connected to. And so since really the roofs of each signature, neither one is facing the side of the get, neither one is facing the side, it's not going to be okay. So the Gemara says, well, what if that's the case? Say for the next clause, Dikotani, which is states, Rosh Shalzeh, Sofa Shalzeh. Well, the next case in the Mishnah says, if the top of one get is facing the end of the other get, and the witnesses are in the middle, then the get with which the witnesses are read with, i.e., the one that was at the end and the witnesses are read with, it will be kosher. But if you're going to say v'di the rami be'ivra kivra lava'adei adadi high mikra lava'adei high mikra, but if it's like a bolt in between the two documents, then it's not read with either one. So how can you say it's kosher? Ela Rav b'diskei avichasim. So the Gemara says, okay, Rav would sign it very differently. Rav would sign it b'diskei. Look at Rashi. Ki chatem min atzad lo b'gittin lo b'shtaros. When Rav would sign from the side, he wouldn't do it with a get, and he wouldn't do it with contracts. Ela b'diskei. He would do it with something called a diskei. What's a diskei? It's a summons. Kishayim mazamin. When he would send them a hazmana to come to the court, it's just a hazmana, just an invitation from the court, and then there was no problem to do it from the side there. So maybe did it specifically to show it wasn't a regular contract. So then the Gemara says, the Mishnah said if there was a get that was written in Hebrew and signed in Greek, it was in Greek was kosher, or if the scribe wrote it with one witness, it's kosher. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah chasam sofer shaninu. So when do we say that the scribe writes it with one witness, it's kosher? Where the scribe signed it, so then it was kosher. So Amar Rav Chisda says, Hamani, who is this like? This is like Rabbi Yossi. This is like the position of Rabbi Yossi, who says Mili lo nimsri l'shliach, that you're not allowed to give something else over to an agent. If this agent asks you to sign it, you can't ask him to point somebody else. And so therefore, we don't have to be concerned that somebody else was asked to be the witness, and the scribe did it even though he wasn't asked to do it. So the Gemara says, "Hahi ksuvas chasanim to also kamed Rabbi Avo." If there was a ksuva that came in front of Rabbi Avo, that there was a ksuva that came in front of Rabbi Avo, and they recognized the tofsa, meaning to say they recognized the, Rashi says that they recognized the handwriting of the scribe and witnesses of one of the signatures, but they didn't recognize the signature of the second one, Rashi says. So there was this scenario. They thought to say it's kosher. And Rabbi Yirmiyah chasam sofer shaninu. No, we need to recognize the signature of the second one. Now, it's not okay just having the scribes writing it. We need to have the scribes signing it with one witness. That would be okay. Kasav chanikasa v'chanikasa kosher. If he writes a family name accompanying it, then it will be kosher as a witness. Means say Ben, let's say Shmuel Ben, and then you write, let's say in my case, Rhinus, like a family name, that would be okay. So the Gemara says, Chanichos avos begittin ayudaladoros. So the Gemara tells us that you could put a very special family name up until 10 generations. You could write like like Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish, Ish Shemini, going back even up to 10 generations, you have a family Yichus. You could say Shmuel, the son of Rebelli Melech, in my case. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Gimel doors, 3 generations is kosher. From that point on is disqualified. So the Gemara says, Kaman Azal Hadamar Mechanina, Kosav Chanichos Avos Begittin Ad Gimel Doros, until 3 generations you can write it. The Gemara says, well, obviously it's like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. It's obviously like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. So we have Rabbi Chanina is like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Amar Afuna Maikra. What's the verse that says you have them until 3 generations? Kisoa banim ubnei banim b'no shantem. You give birth to children and grandchildren, and so that's the source of this idea. So, meaning, say after the grandchildren, then you can't, then you're no longer associated. So that's the idea. Kisoa banim ubnei banim. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi lo charva eretz Yisrael ad she'avdu bo zayin batei dinin avodah zarah. So since we cited the verse Kisol Banim Bnei Banim and Oshantem, which is the verse that we read on Tisha B'Av, now the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Shimon Levi said that Eretz Yisrael was not destroyed until 7 Batei Dinim worshipped Avodah Zarah. These are the Batei Dinim: Yeravam ben Nevat, Uvasha ben Achia, Pasha ben Achia, Acha ben Omri, Yehu ben Nimshi, Petach ben Ramalyahu, Nachem ben Gadi, Hoshea ben Allah. All these 7 courts worshipped idolatry. As it states, Umora Yoledes Hasheva, the one who bore 7 is desolate. Nafcha Nafsha Ba Shemsha Ba'od Yamam. Her spirit is miserable, her scent set in the middle of the day. Busha v'chafera. She's embarrassed and ashamed. So when you have like 7 idolatrous royal families, then Eretz Yisrael will be desolated. Amar Avami Maikra, what's the verse? Kisolad banim ubnei banim. Now when you get children and grandchildren, and the next pasuk says that they're going to be worshiping idolatry. So children, grandchildren, and that equals children of children. So therefore, you, children, grandchildren, and then plus 5 and 7. So now we're going to discuss Hoshea ben Elah. So what do we know about Hoshea ben Elah? It says, that he did wicked in the eyes of Hashem, just not as bad as the rest of the kings of Israel. Allah Shalman Esar, against Hoshea ben Elah, Shalman Esar, the king of Assyria, came up. So the question is, why did the destruction of the land happen when Hoshea was the king, if he wasn't as bad as the other kings? So Rav said to them, Osam Pardios, Shahushiv Yeravim al Drachim, Kadesh Yauba, Israel Regal, Ba Hoshea Bitlan. Because Hoshea got rid of the officers that Yeravim had set up to stop people from going up to Yerushalayim, and he got rid of them. The Alpha became all Israel Regal. Nevertheless, the Jewish people did not go up to Jerusalem. So Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu, Osan Chanam Shlo all Israel Regal Yalchu B'Shem. For those years that they didn't go into Jerusalem for the pilgrimage, they're going to go into captivity. Amar Chesam Amar Rav Chesam Rabbi Yirmiyah Darash Meir or Ma'idel Siva Yishkol Hashem Al Ra'ad Hashem quickened the calamity. What do we do from that? As it states, and he brought all these terrible things upon us. So the Gemara, Kitzadik Hashem Olkeinu, because Hashem is righteous. So Mishum Kitzadik Hashem Olkeinu, Vayishkol Hashem Al Ravi, because Hashem is righteous, he quickened it and he brought upon us. Ela Tzedakah Sa Kodesh Baruch Hu Yisrael, Shehigo Go Tzidkiyahu. So it's telling us that Hashem did righteousness and charity with the Jewish people when he sent out Tzidkiyahu from exile. Meaning to say that the exile of the Jews from Eretz Yisrael first was with Yechanya and then was with Tzidkiyahu. So, meaning to say that first in the first wave of exile brought Yechanya, and then after that, 11 years later, it was when Tzidkiyahu was driven out. So therefore, So therefore, so it's telling us that Hashem did a righteousness for the Jewish people when He sent out Tzidkiyahu. The sages of the exile of Yechanya were still in Babylon. The exile of Charesh and the Masker numbered 1,000. So they were there, and they were still able to teach them Torah. Charesh, what does it mean, Charesh? And once they began discussing Torah, everybody else remained quiet and was able to listen like mutes. Masker, Kivin Shesogrin, once they closed the discussion, Shuvain and Poskim, nobody else opened it up. The Kama, how many scholars were there outside the land of Israel? In Babylon, Elaf. And those scholars taught, when Tzidkiyahu came, they were able to teach them the Torah. So another example of why Hashem was righteous is that He advanced the exile by 2 years as compared to Venushantam, meaning to say the gematria of Venushantam is 852. The Jewish people would have been destroyed if they stayed in Eretz Yisrael for 852 years. However, Hashem saved them from total annihilation by exiling them after 850 years. So when Hashem, when it says quickly, that means 852 years, meaning to say, it says in the pasuk and you will be destroyed quickly. So according to Ulav, Nishantam teaches that the Jewish people would have been destroyed if they remained in Eretz Yisrael for 852 years. So therefore, Hashem took us out 2 years earlier, and so therefore we see from here that the word Mehira for Hashem means 852. Get Ma'usa B'Yisrael kosher. Let's say you have a get which was made by force in the land of Israel, that's kosher. But with the idolaters, it is disqualified. Meaning to say, if a Jew forces the get, it's kosher. If a Jewish court forces the man to give a get, it's kosher. But if an idolatrous court forces it, it's disqualified. However, even if it's done by a court of idolaters, that even the idolatrous court can force it if the Jews tell him, the Jewish court tells him, you have to do what the Jews tell you to do. Gittin, kosher, shalom Gittin, possible. If the Jews force the get, but they do this in accordance with the Torah law, Rashi says, like those cases where we said he has to divorce her or she's prohibited him, then it's going to be kosher. But if it's not Gittin, it's going to be possible. It's not going to allow her to remarry under those circumstances. And even though this get is disqualified, nevertheless, she can't marry Uposo, and she's not allowed to marry a Kohen. And if it was a court, if it was forced by the idolaters, Kedin, Paso, if it was done properly, it's going to be disqualified. Uposo, Shalo Kedin. If it's done improperly, she can never marry a Kohen. Shalo Kedin, but if it's done, the idolaters forced again, it's not done accordance with the Torah, I feel reach getting, but it doesn't even have the reach get, the smell get. So Gemara says, "Manav shach if the idolaters can force it, it's kasher and amilas kasher. It should be kosher. If they can't force it, mifsol apostle, it shouldn't be disqualified." So Amar Masharsha Dvar Torah get usam of the chavim kasher. He says, technically speaking, get forced by the idolaters is kosher. Matam Amar apostle. What's the reason why we say it's disqualified? We don't want everybody to go to the idolaters and ask them to solve their problems. And we don't want a woman to go to the idolaters and ask her to threaten her husband. And that way she gets away from her husband. So why do we say if it's done improperly, it doesn't even smell like a get? And it should be the case of the Jew. She should be prohibited to a Kohen. So the Gemara says, okay, right? That Ramasharshi is wrong. If the idolater is forced to get, then it's not going to be even kosher min Torah. The time of why? What's the reason why she can? She's not able to marry a Kohen. Kedin, bechadin d'Yisrael mechlaf, because we're worried that if it was done properly, we're going to confuse it with the case of a Jewish one that was done b'din. And so therefore, since the Jewish one can if it was done properly, she is divorced. We want to make sure that if it was done by the idolaters, she can't marry a Kohen. But if the idolatrous court was done not according to proper law, we're not going to confuse that with the Jewish court that was done not in proper law. And so therefore, the rabbis don't have to say that she's always prohibited. Abai asked Rabbi Yosef, Abai found Rabbi Yosef that he was sitting become asa Gittin, and he was forcing the Gittin. Amrullah, he says to Rabbi Yosef, how can we force the get? We're not experts. We're hajotos. Wherever you find gatherings of idolaters, even though they have the same law as the Jews, you can't ask them for a judgment. We go to the Jews and not the idolaters. You go to them and not to the common people. So how can we sit there and force a court? We're carrying out the orders of the sages of Israel, just like we do in cases of loans and admissions. So we can do knasos, we can do robbery and other torts. Yeah, we're their agents, but only on things that are common, but not that are things that are not common. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah, let's say there was a rumor in the town that this woman was married. We're going to say she's married. Migarashis, divorce, Harezu Migarashis. She can't remain married to a Kohen. As long as she doesn't have something that's a masla, that we could say that's the reason for the rumor. Ezu masla, Kirshish Bonis Ishto Tanai. Maybe it was said that he did it on a Tanai. Zarka Kidusha, Safik Haravlo, Zui Amasa. If he throws her the Kedushin, it's partially close with her, partially close with him. This is the Amasa. Okay, Shakoach, we'll stop here, the recording.